This theater opened on October the 9th, 1927. It opened because a very successful Schumann Piano Company was going bankrupt to the new invention, radio. The men were trying to find a new enterprise, and atmospheric theaters had just been started. The first one built was the Hoblitzel Majestic down in Houston, Texas. So they decided to build an atmospheric theater. But they put in 5 storefronts and 18 apartments because they wanted to be sure they had an income every month, whether the theater was successful or not. If you look to the front of the building, you'll see that there are 5 doors along the North Main Street. Because the theater is on the National Register, they had to be left. But they were closed off, and all of the divisions of the stores were taken out, and this was made into one large meeting room. Mr. Van Meter was very much involved in theaters. Mr. Van Meter liked neither to watch time or to have any food in the theater, but both of those had to be given up because of the caramel corn that people were bringing in and the fact that children didn't go home during the movies that ran one after the other after the other. Parents would have to either come down and get them or send somebody down the aisles to try and find their children. So Mr. Van Meter went out and bought a large colonial advertising clock, a lighted one that he hung down in the front corner of the theater, so no one ever had an excuse after that. We always start out in the front lobby of our theater there because of the big lighting board. There were 2 of those, side by side on the west side of the stage. The big levers turned on whole banks of lights. The individual lights were turned on by small switches. And at the very end are the switches to turn on the clouds and the stars. So we'll go into the main auditorium. You're sitting in the seats, not the first 5 rows, because all of those seats and the seats in the balcony had to remain because the theater's on the historic status. We're the only theater in the entire Midwest to have a complete set of atmospheric stars, clouds, moon, and sunrise. I introduced Bob Bates, and Bob comes up playing the organ with Stardust and Blue Moon and Oh What a Beautiful Morning. We can demonstrate all of our atmospherics. It's a very special organ. It actually is either one of 2 or maybe the only one in the entire country, original organ on the original lift that rotates, so that's something we're very proud of. The atmospheric theaters had villages. We have an Italian village and a Spanish village on either side. You were supposed to be sitting on the shores in our theater of the Mediterranean looking at a program because the theme of our theater is a garden. As we go around the theater, this is the work of a man called Walter Scott Bell. He was a theater designer for the interior of the theaters. This was his 106th theater. He said it was his very best work. We go up the main stairway to the organ chamber, first of all, to explain what's going on and how the instruments work and all. And then we go into the apartments. There were 16 apartments. They've been totally refurbished, but they've been left as they were. Murphy pull-down bed is there. A small kitchen with an ironing board that collapses out of the wall. A very fancy gate. The last rental I saw was about $80 a month back in the early 1990s. At the back of the apartments, they took out the walls of one apartment, and it's now the green room. The green room is a place where people gather together before they're going down to appear on the stage. The furniture in here is original. The most interesting part to us is the Schumann piano. It was one of 3 that was bought by the Schumann Piano Company. This one was the stage piano because it's got the great big Schumann on the side that can be seen from the audience. The piano was played by George Gershwin when the theater first opened. Rhapsody in Blue was played on this very piano, so it's very, very special to us. The piano fell during the Crazy for You program at 2 o'clock in the morning. One of the technicians from New York was supposed to push 2 buttons to start 2 motors. To lower the piano, he only pushed 1. So 800 pounds of piano landed on the one sling. It broke. It didn't damage the Coronado stage floor, but it knocked the plaster off underneath, and the piano the next night when I saw it was sitting around in big red trash barrels. We bought it for $100 because we wanted to use the Schumann sign, which was still intact, and Karasotis got the $7,000 insurance. It happened that we had a very, very talented man. His name was Terry Foster. Terry took it home, brought it back, and they say it plays as well as it ever did. The rehearsal hall is at the end of the second floor. It is new construction over the old Jackson piano. It has an acoustical ceiling. It has acoustical curtains all around, so people can pull the curtains and have an acoustical area for practice for small groups, not the full symphony. So if you take the elevator to the third floor, you come out in an even larger area. There were 8 apartments here. Those walls have all been taken out. It seems different because now they've put in the restrooms up there and the drinking fountains and all. But from window to window was one apartment, just exactly like the ones you saw downstairs on the second floor. Just before we get to the apartment, below us was the big billboard of coming attractions. We had our own art department. Around this billboard was a great big wooden frame, and most people in Rockford did not know there was a keyhole in the frame. But the Van Meters had a secret stairs and a secret door to their apartment behind that big billboard. The apartment is Art Deco, 1925 Paris Exposition. It's the machine age. The first room you were in used to be the bedroom. But the story is that if you go to the big window and look out the big window at the sign, the upright sign at that time was much bigger. It had 10,000 running red and white lights blinking in Mrs. Van Meter's apartment day and night. And she could not tolerate that, so they painted the windows black. They bricked over them. They plastered over that, and the wall that is now open between what we call our conference room and the living room was a solid wall at that time. Nobody in Rockford had seen the theater lighted as it was intended to be from top to bottom. But after the renovation, you see the beautiful lighting there of the big curved arched window at the very top. The furniture was all sold in 1970 at an auction. We have been hunting for it ever since. We're trying to bring back furniture when we find it, and at least lookalikes. We're very, very fortunate because we have pictures that were taken back at the time that the theater first opened. Art Deco was something very new, and so we have this picture layout so we know what it looked like and can try and reproduce it as best we can. Everybody's favorite is always the bathroom. The round bathroom, pink and maroon, glass walls again. The fixtures are original, etching over the tub. And of course, the closet next door is very popular. People would like it with all of everything covered with glass, shoes at the end, storage space at the top. So it was a very, very lovely apartment for the time. Van Meters only lived there 6 months out of the year. Louis St. Pierre was the one that really ran the theater for them. And as you walk up into the balcony, you get a good view of the stage. On the one corner, you see a Spanish dancer. She's covered in gold leaf. Gold leaf came in 4x4-inch sheets, and we had no idea how they could do this. But I met a man named John Lounsbury who lived in Ma Welch's boarding house in 1925 and 26. He said the Belgium decorators lived there, and they would take a single sheet of gold leaf by using a hairbrush, rubbing it gently across their hair, enough static electricity, and they had put a sticky substance on a portion of a statue. They would just take this over on the brush, touch it to the statue, and it would adhere, and then they would brush it in with a soft brush, catching whatever was left. So we have silver leaf, we have gold leaf, we have pastel leaf. No wonder it took them 24 hours a day, month in and month out, just to decorate. the theater. The architecture is very different. The Spanish architecture actually is Moorish. The Moors invaded Spain in 711, and the big round building with the big dome is a Moorish building. Then when Ferdinand and Isabella married, they chased the Moors out of Spain. But that is the Spanish side with its keyhole windows, its greatly decorated plaster. We have an area there, it looks like a Spanish lady, senora, should be throwing flowers down. Originally that was curtained. As we walk across, the proscenium arch actually is supposed to be a bridge over a canal in Venice, the Rialto Bridge. It was the only lighted bridge. At the very top you see King Neptune riding his seahorse. Underneath that are fish heads, because the Mediterranean, the fishing was a very important industry, was a very important food. And on either side you see the big bell towers that were also common in the southern part of the countries along the Mediterranean. The Italian village on the other side is very different. It has round-headed windows. It's much more open. It has balconies. It's a much lighter form of architecture. And as we come down the stairs onto the mezzanine, first of all was the usher's room. This is where the ushers dressed. They wore navy blue uniforms. There were pillbox hats. Their jackets were double-breasted buttons. But they had patent shoes. They had white gloves. They stood inspection there before they were brought down to their aisles. And the head usher had a Sam Browne belt with a wooden wand in it. Now, the ushers were not to speak to each other, although our aisles are close together. The head usher would give them a good crack across the back with his wooden wand if they had not been acting properly. And I've talked to many an usher who went home and said they had a sore back after working at the Coronado. The large chandelier is Czechoslovakian crystal, weighs 2 tons. We're told it was dropped when the theater first opened, but we've never been able to find out what damage was done. Up by the starburst was a very large hand-turned crank, and the men would have to come in off of the balcony on the east side. There's a small door there, walk the plank over to this hand-turned crank, and lower the chandelier twice a year so the ladies could wash it. Would take 4 ladies an entire day just to wash it, and then he would climb back again, crank it up. It lighted now as it was intended to be, with its flame-tipped, inside frosted pink light bulbs, which are very, very difficult to come by, but we have a maker that will do them for us. The furniture up there all came from the Italian Royal Palace. We have 2 king's chairs. King of Italy had been replaced by Mussolini, and so he was selling the palace furniture. We have a buhl table that has been restored. We have the Arabian table, inlaid ivory and fine wood that says there is no God but Allah, and we have an alabaster lamp sitting on that. So we're very, very fortunate. Mrs. Van Meter bought those when she went over with people from Great States Theatrical, and they brought all of that back when the theater first opened. The table up there is unique. It came from Florence, Italy. In fact, Jonathan Etch, who just redid it for us after it had some damage, actually traveled over to Florence and went to the company, and the company identified it as a table of theirs, but they said that they could not prove it because all of their records were lost in a flood over in Florence. But each stone represents a different nation throughout the world, and Mr. Esch is trying to find out more and make us a map of our stones so we will know where each of them came from. And as we come down the front stairs, you're seeing what's known as scagliola. It was first made over in the 14th century over in Italy. It was made by taking a type of moonstone or selenite, heating it very hot, cooling it. They could mix it then, grind it very fine, mix it with a coloring agent and glue, and these artisans could make it look like any kind of natural marble. It does not take a load-bearing wall, though, and now it's a lost art. So we have a small fortune in scagliola on those stairways, around our aisles, and in the columns at the top of the stairs. These theaters are so scarce today. There were almost 300 of them built back in that period of time. There are fewer than 40 left. And most you would not even recognize as historic theaters because they've been changed. They have been altered. This theater has not been changed. It looks virtually the same as it did on opening day. And I think that's very, very significant. And we've been successful in bringing back a lot of the furnishings that were here in the beginning. And I just hope that people continue to appreciate it and look after it. And that's where the future of the theater is going to be.